This was such a beautiful, nourishing podcast episode. I had the honor to sit down with Jeanne de Kroon, who is the founder of Zazi Vintage. And we spoke about so many topics that are so close to my heart. We spoke about decolonizing our closet, honoring sustainability and honesty in fashion and authenticity. We talked about reconnecting to the earth. We talked about the power of women supporting women and honoring the craftsmanship that has belonged to women's hands throughout history. We spoke about reclaiming our history and our rootedness and the soil of our land, that is the Netherlands, and the goddesses that go with that. We spoke about ecofeminism. We spoke about just clothing in general and what that means for us, the energetics of clothing, the clothing that we like in the phases of our cycle. And just in general, this was a beautiful get together, sister to sister conversation that we would love to share with you. And for those of you who don't know Jeanne, let me introduce her to you. Jeanne de Kroon connects worlds and stories through craftsmanship. Jeanne is the founder of Zazi Vintage, partner of the UN Ethical Fashion Initiative, and Woven the Foundation. With a background in philosophy and political science, she started her first company at the age of 22 in Germany, where it was named Best Fashion Business Idea of the Year by both Vogue and Harper's Bazaar just after launching. Working both circular, with natural fibers, and with women's-led artisanal projects, Zazi Vintage focuses on the environmental and social impact behind the garment industry while weaving the stories of nature and women together. Since 2018, Zazi Vintage has become the main partner of the United Nations Ethical Fashion Initiative across Central Asia and Afghanistan. The UN EFI is a joint venture of the UN and WTO that works at the intersection of international development, the creative industries, and the fashion and lifestyle sector, offering sustainability services, products, and developmental projects. Jeanne has led several innovative partnerships in the creative and well-being industry that platform ancestral wisdom through craft and works as a consultant for both governmental bodies and global businesses on respectful co-creation. She has been featured as a storyteller, activist, and thought leader in Vogue, Forbes, TEDx, Faz, and the New York Times, among others. Without further ado, let's dive in, and I hope that you all feel nourished and inspired by our conversation, but especially Jeanne's story. Enjoy listening. You're listening to the podcast of Iris Josephina. If you're passionate about exploring the menstrual cycle, cyclical living, body wisdom, personal growth, spirituality, and running a business in alignment with your natural cycles, you're in the right place. I'm Iris. I'm an entrepreneur, functional hormone specialist, trainer, and coach, and I'm on a mission to share insights, fun facts, and inspiration I discover along the way as I run my business and walk my own path on Earth. Here, you'll hear my personal stories, guest interviews, and vulnerable shares from clients and students. Most people know me from Instagram, where you can find me under @CycleSeeds, or they have been a coaching client or student in one of my courses. I'm so grateful you're here. Let's dive into today's episode. Okay, welcome everyone to a new episode. Today I have the beautiful Jeanne with me. And I am really, really excited that you're here with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I feel like we've had this planned for a long time, and it feels like the right time. We're entering this new phase, also very much in my life. So I'm just very excited to, connect at this moment and with your beautiful community.
Yeah. So, for those of you who don't know you, could you share a little, brief snippet of your story? The people will have heard your introduction at the beginning of the podcast, but I'm curious whether you could just talk a little bit about your unique story and what you do on this planet.
Yeah, so I'm Dutch. I grew up in a city called The Hague, and my father was a documentary maker about the magic of the Dutch light, and my mom was an art historian and a fashion journalist. So I always grew up with like a lot of like, seeing the stories beyond like the sort of the material world. And I think this sort of just like this way of looking at the world has always really enchanted me throughout my entire childhood. Although there were also many heartbreaks in there and difficult moments, it felt like I was always looking for this, yeah, sort of like the magic of life without having the words yet, because I feel like, I grew up in also such a limited culture that sort of like really like repressed both my own magic and like the perspectives on it. And then when I was 17, I lived alone since I was 15. And then when I was 17, I moved out of the house. I ended up in Paris, and there I got discovered as a model. So I flew to New York when I was just 18, and it was really interesting because I think you have this very preconditioned idea, no, as when you're a young girl, and especially when you grow up with like modern media that time, or like mainstream media. So I had this whole incredible like idea of just like, wow, I'm going to like, me and my mom would like geek out on specific silks and like, like the intricacy of small embroidery. And I just remember being there in this like polyester plastic dress and in a bunk bed without a working visa. And I just remembered like, wow, like this is obviously not the story that I was told. And I just remember what it felt like in my body. Like I just felt like I had been so excited for this dream, and then the dream felt so limiting and small. And I've never felt so small. I was also going through a very difficult time in my life, working through trauma. Ended up in Berlin in I think, yeah, when I was just 19, and got very lost there. And then at the to the point where I just like didn't really understand, because the life felt so limiting. And so I knew that I didn't belong on like the path that people around me had. And I also really didn't know what my own path was. And then I remembered I got to this, I booked a ticket to Nepal, and there was this really beautiful woman in a little back alley. And she looked at me in my like all black, like techno outfit. And she just looked at me and she was just like, I don't understand. Your eyes look like celebration, but what is going on with this outfit? And then she dressed me in this incredible old, like I think it was like a 1970s sari, and she told me about
Yeah.
the stories from the mountains. And then I just remembered, and I looked around me and I saw all of the beautiful colors and the smiles and the scents. And I think it was the first time that I was just like, wow, like why isn't this on the cover of the Vogues? Like why did I think that like the airbrushed girl in the magazine, why did I measure myself to that when actually there's so much magic in like the hands of these sort of like unseen stories at that time, because that was also very much the time before we started talking about decolonization in the global debate. And I grew up in the Netherlands, so I had a very limited view, but I just felt this very deeply in like all of my cells.
Mm.
So I think in that's always been the red thread of my life. I come from a weaving family myself. Like my last name is a part of a 17th century weaving machine from the north of the Netherlands. So I this is I think what has pulled me across the world, from the smallest villages in the Amazon to the highest mountains of Tajikistan. I think I have been enchanted myself and inspired and awakened and activated by the stories of women in what we so often you sort of like disregard. It's like, oh, some cute little like craft project. But I actually just felt like, I don't know, it felt like that there was this sort of cosmic thing that was calling through these tiny stitches and like the songs that the women would sing. But I was also a student, so just like I was like feeling all the feelings, but also just like, where do you start with when you're a student and you're trying to fit yourself into the narratives that you're told, and also like are trying to liberate yourself from it. And I was studying philosophy at the time, political science. And then I think at some, yeah, no, not I think, but at some point I met this incredible woman called Madhu Vaishnav, who runs the Saheli Women's Project. I met her when she was just starting out. I think she had gathered like 7 women in the house of her mother-in-law. She had like a super small starting budget of $100. And I just remembered like we were introduced during one of my travels, and I said with her in the car, and she was just like, Jan, I really, if we want to work together, you have to become a fashion designer. And then And then I spent the 2 months there with her family and connecting to the women of of the village. And I think I was just like, I mean, I'm not the fashion designer, obviously, but they are. It was just so beautiful to see, to learn, to sit together, to have giggle, to have chai. And we made these few dresses and then got back to Germany where I was living at the time. And then this sort of became a thing. And it went from me on the Sunday market with like a few finds to this small baby company that has now led me across the world. And we work, I think now it must be around like 12 to 1300 women globally. And we have a small team in Amsterdam. We partner only with women's led rural organizations. So from like wool weavers and spinners in the Himalayas to indigenous women's communities in the Amazon to really co-create garments. And this is for me, it reaches so much further than sustainability because I feel like we're not necessarily in a climate crisis, we're in a connection crisis. And I
Mm.
think that intersects so much on the feminine. And I think yeah, that's has become my main intentionality of life, to rediscover like what happens when women come together and create and try to create these little ecosystems that can hopefully mimic what is needed globally for us as a humankind to come back to creation that is in harmony with nature, with community, and based on reciprocity.
Wow, that's really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your stories of so vulnerably, and how you kind of like went from the like almost like dark mainstream fashion world to this really authentic way of engaging with people, with fabrics, with land. I'm just endlessly inspired by you and how you weave all of that together, and how amazing it must feel that this has grown so big and there are so many women on this planet that are supported by the company that you founded, and how they can really keep their craft alive and share their skill. This is just, yeah, really, really beautiful. How do you feel that this kind of connectivity or connection and community can also help us reconnecting to the earth? Because of course all of the fabrics that are used in the garments that all these women create, they're not just pulled from, from inorganic substance. They come from the earth, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting now because I think like we're so, because essentially like what we call the fashion industry now has once come from just women in their home creating from land, from local nature. Like essentially you could trace back any garment to the local region, the biodiversity, like the layers of nature and like the culture that was in relationship to it. And that at some point, I think through industrialization and globalization, we have, like, because of the patriarchal system, we have shifted the gaze from the maker to the model, and also therefore really like took away our connection to it. Because essentially, like every time we're connecting now to fashion, not every time but most times, we're actually connecting to a created story and not the story where it actually comes from. So, just like in small things, like of course when you see a dress, I don't know, on Instagram or social media or like in a magazine, like it's very rare that you actually see the story of the clothing. It's always like, it's a creation from a designer from the global north and it's made somewhere from, let's say, like polyester all comes from petroleum, so from oil. So it's like pulled extractively from the ground in places where, yeah, mostly indigenous communities live and the most vulnerable, and it's sort of just like masked in this very glamorous way. Whereas, and I think, essentially, and I think this is something that I even, like still every single season, I learn more and more and more, and there are more layers that are coming to the surface. So for me, like starting Zazi, because I didn't really have any pressure when I started it. And I think even now, like I still don't have investors. So it is for me, like every single, I don't know, yeah, almost like season that we do, it feels like I am reminded of the cyclical nature of Earth. Because when you actually work in harmony with Earth, like we work with this incredible women's organization, for example, in the Himalayas, and they work with over 250 pastoral families and shepherds. So they collect, like when the sheep sort of graze over the mountains, like during the whole season with the local shepherds, they collect the wool, they wash it in the Himalayan spring waters, and then they look at the local nature and at the seasons that are there. And they, like, from, let's say, the plants or the earth or the little walnuts that come from the trees, from the organic material, they create the natural dyes. So, and then while they weave, they sing the songs of the spider goddess and their ancestral sort of spirit, or like guardians that are protecting their land, as a thank you and as like an honoring for the creation that they do. And I was just like, and then you feel like what this sort of does when you put it over your body. Like, I think this is also so interesting. Like, we've so long put ourselves aside from nature, although we are nature. And you really feel this the moment that you are starting to understand the stories of clothing, and also really have, there's this different sense when you walk in like a natural, like an old grown forest, like it does something different to your nervous system. And the same thing is with when you wear something that is of organic materials and that is made in, like, in harmony and with community. So yeah, I think it has been teaching me so much. And this is, like, we just so often don't see, like, for like a little, just first you need to have like the tiny little cotton seed, and then you have to plant it, then it can only harvest normally, like naturally, one time. We have these unnatural cycles of like 4 times now that are depleting the land. But when you really do it, it's one time. And then you imagine the farmers, that are working with the land throughout the season, that are collecting it and harvesting it from the small little flowers, and then like weaving it and spinning it with these incredible little tools. And by the time you even have the cotton, and not even like the dyeing or the embroidering or the stitching, I think it just made me understand so much that everything that we that we have around us is a product of creation, and it tells a story of our relationship to it. So yeah, I think it really has inspired me on so many levels. And even like having my own little garden, at some point I adopted these very cute little rescue hens, and I just was just so fascinated by the first egg they made as well. So I was just like, wow, you made this in your belly, and it was such a simple thing. But I think because I understood that little chicken and her personality, and then I saw this little egg, and I was just like, wow. And now I cannot see an egg anymore without thinking of like which cute little fluffy lady made it. And I cannot see a garment anymore without thinking like, wow, like, who made this? Like, what are her dreams? What are her wishes? What is her story? Like, I just imagining, mostly I just imagine like a beautiful mother, because it is mostly mothers. No, it's like the global fashion world, I think. No, the global fashion industry, it's worth $2.4 trillion. Around
Yeah.
80% of the people that make fashion, sell fashion, buy fashion, are women. And we only own 10% of global capital within the fashion industry, and around, like, in places like India, like 8% of land used. So it is a women's industry, although the women's stories, and actually like where it has come from, both the Mother Earth and the creators behind it, they're shadowed. Like we
Mm.
don't see that. And I think it's been really interesting within my own business and within my own journey, is how to create new structures that can actually honor that feminine essence of creation. Yeah.
Oh, that's really beautiful. It actually made me emotional when you were sharing about the women in India honoring the land and giving thanks to the land while they're like weaving and working the clothes with their craftsmanship or craftwomanship.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really beautiful how there was a story in every stitch of the fabric. And I think many people don't even think about that. And then to take it a step further, how I feel it when, for example, I have like a piece of clothing that comes from like the fast fashion
Mhm.
mainstream world. I
Yeah.
feel it in my body when when I've worn, for example, like an organic merino wool shirt or a sweater that I
Mhm.
know is made sustainably and ethically and with so much love and care. I literally feel that in my body. like how
Yeah.
my body responds to it. And I think many people are not very aware of it. But I also feel like what you said earlier is that we lost connection with that. If I remember the stories of my grandmother, they were making their own clothes. They
Yes.
spent time doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's like really within like two generations we've lost it,
Yes.
no? And it's really interesting, like, because the same thing with me. Even like when I look at my mother, like she's still really like brought things to the tailor. Like I think, when she was, I mean, she's I think in her late 60s now, but she has such a different relationship than I grew up, or the people from generation before me grew up with fashion, because we come in such a like this, yeah, just fast fashion that you can throw away, that works within this like crazy attention span of 2 seconds, and then it's like based upon trends, and it's really interesting. It's really like that. It's just like phenomenal to see the change within a few generations. Just like when I listened to my mom and my grandmother, they were still eating organic food now. So it's really like the real like repression of nature, I feel like, has been such a product of like the last, I don't know, 50, 60 years.
Yeah, and then at the same time, parallel to that, there are communities in the world where these beautiful crafts are sustained and
Yeah.
where people are working so hard and with so much dedication to sustain and maintain this. Do you feel sometimes on your travels that people like want to shift? I remember when I was in the Colombian Amazon
Uh-huh.
like 10 years ago, that people were like in this dilemma. Like
Hmm.
they were very much into like, oh, we need to like sustain these crafts, but then I also want what you have. I want to wear what you're wearing. And how have you observed that on your travels?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think, like the sort of the colonization and the industrialization, and also like of media, especially in countries in the global north, has been very present. Like this has been like I've see this in so many different communities. They're just, but I also really notice, because we do work with the communities that really want to safeguard the craft, and mostly it's the mothers and the older women in the, like, really like the elders in the village. Like for example, in the Himalayan village, there's just, I think there are just one or two elders left that know how to work with the really old weaving tool. So it's mostly the younger generations that are sort of course like growing up with more like modern media, and they're like, but wait a minute, like I want to be, like in the, let's say, like I want to wear the Bollywood stars outfits. But then I do really notice, and I think this is what has really shifted. I remember when Black Lives Matter happened, and I was really hoping, like, wow, I really hope that this is not just the start of like more diversity on the magazine front pages, but I also really hope that this can become this start of like the reclamation of ancestral cultures for so many people that have felt lost in the one-sided narrative. And I feel like when I'm in India right now, like there is such an incredible like wave of the reclamation of culture and diversity happening, that also sparks like back through in media. Like when we did the last collaboration, like we had this incredible article by Vogue India that like celebrated the craft from the Himalayas, and they're doing such an incredible job at really like refocusing the shift back onto the makers. And I think this is also, this works in sort of like a both ways, that I feel like a lot of the makers, when they understand like, oh, like my craft or my story is not something of an old world. It's actually very, it's the most, it is what we already feel like it's the most important thing to safeguard right now. It's also that there is this incredible pride that comes back. So yeah, it's definitely there, and it really depends per region of what I've seen. Because also 100%, like I even noticed this with some of the amazing like indigenous women's communities that are living next to these villages that are highly sort of colonized by the agri businesses, and that have like really cheap imported things from, let's say, China,
Mm.
because there is like really intense Chinese market penetration in these tiny little villages in the Amazon, where you're just like, wow, how did these like like fluorescent Christmas lights ended up in like a small village next to the Amazon basin? So there's definitely this sort of like, especially from local communities there, at least this is what I've learned from a lot of like my indigenous activist friends and indigenous friends there, that there's this, yeah, that there's also locally a lot of sort of disapproval of the indigenous ways, just shaped by media. But also even like in those areas, I do notice like there has been just such a strong movement, whether it's in Brazil with the indigenous peoples that I've been mostly connected to, or whether it's in the in Indian Himalayas. I feel like there's such a strong force right now that is like beyond what we can really grasp, that is on its way to find more connection and reclamation. And I think even also within myself, I think like decolonizing my own perspective of what it meant to be Dutch has been very powerful, because I think for a long time I've always just thought like, okay, great, like all of these like amazing women that I work with, they have these stories of culture of land. Like I can sit with the elders to learn about the songs that they sing, for the little plants that come up in the seasons. But like, what am I? Like, I'm just like a I don't know, like I'm a sort of like I'm a descendant of like the people that brought all the problems to the world. Like don't like what are the women from my land? Didn't they sing songs? Like we have nature, well, and a little bit still, but once very much. So I think also even for myself, I've been through my discovery of just like what the feminine means within sort of like the avatar that I got from this lifetime from the Netherlands. Like what are the stories there? And I think that's also been just a really powerful journey to reconnect back to my ancestral wisdoms. I've spent the last, I don't know, I think like 2 years just researching like sort of decolonizing, yeah, European history and looking at that from like an eco-feminist perspective, and seeing how the system of 4,000 years of patriarchy and like the like how colonialism started, and how it's so much a story of intergenerational trauma, and that the women from my land also sang songs and also had a cosmology that was based on animism and nature based, yeah, religion. So I think what I'm noticing is like, and I think that's been such an inspiration to work with these communities for me to go on this discovery course of like of the global story of the feminine and the repression of the feminine.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. My background is in anthropology, so my heart just beats faster when I hear you talk about this, because I've been on like a similar journey. Like I have
Yeah,
found myself like traveling the world for most of my 20s and eventually realizing like, hold on a minute, like why am I constantly like running away from my roots in the Netherlands? Like isn't
yeah,
there also magic in that land, and how far do I have to look back, like pre-Christian times, to find what I'm so desperately looking for in other places where they
yeah.
have been able to sustain and maintain these types of cosmologies better than where we're from, because of the past that we've had in our country, and patriarchy and witch hunts and all the terrible stories of Europe that you are well aware of.
Mhm.
And I think there is so much healing and magic in going back to our roots, like in our own bodies, but also in the like on the earth, the land that we grew up in, where our roots lay. And I think you're also familiar with the work of Naomi van Rey, right?
Oh yeah, she's so
Yeah.
cute. I really like
Yeah.
her. Yeah, I once did a session with her, and we've always kept in contact. I really, really admire her. But yeah, tell me, what have you connected with her
Well,
on?
she is now offering a course that I'm doing. It's called Spirit Weavers or Wisdom Weavers. Wisdom
Yeah,
Weavers.
yeah.
And it is exactly about that. It's about finding your roots in the Netherlands, and all the goddesses of the Netherlands, like Frau Holle and Anna and
Gosh,
Ostara. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And
wow. I didn't
yeah.
know. That's so exciting. Yeah. No, and I think this is so important because I think it really gives this extra layer of belonging that I think so many women around me are looking for. And I think this was also for me, I think just like I'm so grateful to have learned from, the philosophy of yoga, and like, to work with different cultures and women. But I think we can only really relate so much better from a place of like authenticity when we start to understand our own story, and
Yeah.
not from a place of guilt, because this is in the end, or shame, because this is really what I believe is like the lowest frequency, but really to come from a place of like, okay, so what are all of these multi-layered stories that are present in my culture, and like what, like both the good and the ugly, and like to understand that there is so much magic. And I'm really excited to, this is why I moved back to the Netherlands after being abroad for 10 years, because I
Mhm.
was really longing for this. And I think the last 3 years has been such a profound healing, not just in within my own family system, also with my family, with my mom, with my grandmother that's in the spirit world, but also, yeah, I went to visit all of these old sacred sites of the Netherlands at some
Mm.
point, like last winter, and I like went there with my little like tools, and I would sit on these old like burial hills, and I would meditate, and I would ask for support, and like it was so magical. It was like I would wake up in the middle of the night and have tears coming through me. It just
Oh,
felt like every cell in my body was coming home, and I could sense the grief and the fear, but also the expansion and the power. And I sometimes, like in moments now, I know also how to call up on my ancestors, and I feel like the Dutch wise women and the spirits of the land when I need support. And then the land learns to speak to me too, and I think that's been such a magical thing. I think it's like, while we all have this sort of creatrix power as women and also as humans in general to be able to connect deeper, like the more that we ground, and the more that we ground both towards the ground and towards the sky, I think also the more that we can talk with the natural world and life, and it becomes more of a dance. And yeah, I think, yeah, just very passionate about this. But I'm like so not there yet. But I feel like I'm just embarking on probably a journey that's gonna like continue the rest of my life on really what it means to create, to connect from my roots, and also to see myself like beyond my roots as a like a spiritual being having a human experience. And I think that's also the thing, like spirit, like it translates through the material world, but it doesn't really have a face or a name. It's just a thing that moves through us.
yeah, I totally agree. When you said spirit, I saw like spirit infusing the fabrics that are made by these women as well.
Yes, me too. I feel this so much and so deeply. Like this is why I can get so emotional with like a little piece of, I don't know, like vintage textile. I just feel the spirit in it. Just like I can, yeah, I can feel, just when like there's a beautiful meal that's homemade and like grown by farmers in the area, or like I think this is something that, like as I think spirituality has, I think it's very much about self and understanding self in the world. But I think
Mhm.
for me, it's so much more about like, it's about service, it's about listening, it's about, and then using our like material bodies to activate something in the world, like our gifts that we have to offer. What did I want to say with this? Yeah, no, spirits of the fabrics too. Sorry, I'm going into a thing.
That's okay. And I wanted to ask you, maybe for people who are getting inspired and who are maybe in the Netherlands right now, is there any way that you have or that you would be able to share like a tip, like where to start when you want to connect with either the land or fabric?
Yeah, many. I mean, so I am not an expert, but I think what really helped me is I think I made a little altar for with my both sort of like maternal, not maternal, both of my grandmothers on top of it with like the seasonal flowers, and I gave the little offering. You can cook them like their favorite meals, or like give them a little cute little chocolate, and like collect flowers that speak to you in some way, that are in bloom in the season. And I think just doing a little meditation or like a moment of gratefulness, I feel like there is so much that wants to run through us, but just like because we don't have practices, or we haven't really learned how to cultivate practices that honor like the spiritual world of our cultures, this is something that really has helped me. And then just learning more about, like the sort of like the old, or like the Dutch ancestral, or the Germanic traditions, like what goddesses were on the land, or what goddesses were honored on specific days. And I do really try to celebrate like all of the days now. So whether it's like Solheim, or it's, yeah, what else is Beltane, you have all of these like sort of
Mm.
ancestral days of celebration. And whether it's something small or something big, like, making a little altar, collecting some flowers, or planting something, I think it's really in these small things that we can learn so much to sort of reconnect to nature. And then what else has really supported me with textiles? This was actually amazing. I remember I have this really incredible friend that I made just at the beginning of the lockdown. His name is Theodorus Johannes, and he has this really amazing like online, not online, yeah, online series that is about like old ancestral Dutch costumes. He's
Oh,
like really into
wow.
this. We traveled all across the Netherlands to find sort of like the textiles and the stories and the old ladies with very cute little hats that were still practicing these old traditions of the Netherlands. And he took me to Marken, which is this small village in the north of the Netherlands where I'm from like Frisia's, but it's quite close. And it was we went there to the costume museum, and I was like, I had no idea that this was all there, like this, that we also like, just like other cultures that I've been working with have been getting to learn from. We had different stitches for different wishes, and like when mothers, when their daughters got married, they would embroider like a certain piece of cloth for X amount of months or days, and like that you wear something different with for every moment in life that you're in, or have little birds that mimic the birds, or like the little swallows. Or it was just so fascinating, or like certain stitches that carried certain meaning, that this was all still there. And it's sort of just like I don't know, it's like a really like a sub hobby in the Netherlands, like it's a really specific little world. But then I got in it and I was like, wow, like we have it too. And then understanding, so that was amazing, like when it comes to sort of like more ancestral Dutch textiles, and but they're also relatively recent, though. So I think, yeah, I think it's been for me just like and then visiting, for example, you have this book called Heiden's Nederland, and you have different.
Oh, I have that book.
Yeah, I love this. I remember, and then I just like was I think like last year was reading like The Great Cosmic Mother, and like there was this other Sylvia Federici, I think, on
Ah,
like
yeah.
this on like the sort of like the repression of the feminine, and how that links to colonization, also the start of capitalism and feudalism, and all of these. It's more like it's very brainy, but I was reading The Great Cosmic Mother, Heiden's Nederland, and then this woman on witchcraft, and I just remember I like just felt so many feelings. I would sit in the bathtub and just feel like, oh my god, like this feeling in my body. And even, yeah, even understanding what happened to the women from my own family.
Mm.
I think this is something that was, and still, like even last week I found something out that there was a, yeah, that there was a great grandmother that was locked up in a mental institution,
Oh my
because she
God.
refused to do that. Probably, I don't know, because she refused to be in this old traditional village in the Netherlands. And I think I was just like got shivers all over my spine, and I was like, wow, like women were only seen as normal citizens in 1957, I think,
Hmm.
and we have, like, although it feels right now like we really stand here, I think, in this generation on top of so many women that have fought so hard within their beings to liberate themselves from yeah, like the past generations. So I think also understanding that, also understanding, I think for me, like connecting more to my voice, and also, like I think trauma is really storage in the womb. Not all trauma, but a lot of trauma that women storage in their womb, like is passed down through generations. So I think also starting to really reconnect to my womb, and then reconnecting to my voice, reconnecting to my breath in a deeper way within my whole nervous system has also brought up a lot of like, yes, like the repression of the feminine within my, or like the trauma that the feminine has stored within my sort of like maternal lineage.
Hmm.
So I think it's multi-layered. It's like the big story, but it's also the small story, not the like, it's the inner and the outer world. It's the,
Yeah.
I think this is something that also, I have this amazing friend. She's a Mayan womb healer. She comes from her lineage of family. Like all of the women in her family are like Mayan healers. And she also just said, like sometimes we look so far in like across all the world for answers and other sacred medicines that are not linked to our culture. Although we can find so many answers just in stillness, reconnecting to our own bodies, our own families. And I think this is really what has, yeah, really inspired me. Like the power and the medicine of just like of inquiry within my own body. What is stored there? What stories are stored there? And yeah, that's a process that's, I think, forever unfolding. So very excited.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I completely agree with you. Like sometimes the wisest thing to do is come back to the body and to the land and the nature around us. I recently heard this podcast. I can't remember who said it, but she said it's sometimes good to just spend time knowing what is in a 5 kilometer radius around you and your body. And that's it.
Yeah.
To just like learn about what's going on around you. And I was like, I don't even know what are the native plants around me. Like in a
Right.
radius of 5 kilometers, I don't even know that. I have no idea.
Yeah. I think this is for me like what really activism is. I think it's for me like the like activism and like what like how you really can sort of, I don't know, like transform the world really starts in what's in your own body, what is storage there, like what is in your direct surroundment and how can you have an impact there. I think often we look at all of these stories I think through, like media and like internet and I don't know, like social media, like there's so much in the outside world. Although, what you say is just like, how do I like let's first start before like, like traveling across the world to learn from all of these other incredible cultures. Like let's just learn, which plant is growing in the season. Like how can I use it for healing? Like or like how
Yeah.
can I honor my own cycle in more deeper way? Like how can I relate to my mother or to the people around me in like a softer way? How can I, and I think from that place I feel like always when we do the work or like the activations in our own world, then the world invites us to share that in a bigger way through like the embodiment of that wisdom. And I think that for me is like the really the practice, because I think in the beginning like of my journey of my 20s I've spent, I feel like my entire 20s like running away, running towards stuff. And whether this was like, I don't know, like travels or boys or things or houses, I don't know, I was just always very much looking for the next thing. And I think I really want to have like as the practice more for my 30s is like just to really slow down deeper into my own body
Mm.
and my own heart and really come more from a place of the heart and embodied wisdom and not so much from like the mind. And I think that's also how we can really create like more of an impact in the world in such a more strong way than just yeah mimicking other people's stories or facts that are some that is just also not our story. I think the most powerful transformation is like the embodiment of or learned wisdom through experience.
Yeah. I resonate so much with everything that you're saying. And I also love that you mentioned connecting through to our own cycles, our own cyclical bodies. And to close off, I want to ask you a little bit of a funny question.
Yeah, I like funny questions. Yeah, tell me.
I'm just very curious about your choice of clothing because I know that you love adorning yourself with
Mm,
all the beautiful fabrics and the jewelry, and just I love the way that you express yourself through fabrics and clothing and garments.
yeah.
And I'm curious how your choice of clothes shifts and changes throughout your menstrual cycle. Like, are you drawn to any type of clothing in a specific phase of your cycle?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, like, oh, like it really changes. Just all the things, like, I don't know. I mean, this for me is definitely a thing, but not for everyone. I'm very much into like astrology and also into human design, but I'm very much a Leo. I think I have like 4 or 5 Leo placements. So I love expression. Like expression is just like my favorite thing. I've always, whenever I was like very young, 5 years old or 6 years old, I would like curate my whole outfits and put all the ribbons in my hair and like all the little feathers I could find on the ground or like like would just make my own like outfits from the curtains that I would find at the charity shop. So I've always just been very excited about expressing whatever was in me. And then I got really confused at some point with, I don't know, just like trends and things and black outfits in Berlin. And then now I feel like I really have my authentic style. And that's just, it really goes from like subcategories of, I don't know, I get really excited about finding like antique French theater pieces from like the 18 and the 1900s, which I then
I love
style with like
I love
like with like I don't know, just like an amazing like vintage trouser that I found on the little market, or and then like I don't I so my style is really like it's really me, like there's really no trend or no thought behind it. And then the style that we create with Zazi is like it's really a co-creation, so it's just what happens with when all these women, like both in my team here and the women there, come together and they both start talking about their dreams and the colors and the things. So also that doesn't really have like a style label. But anyways, cycle, yes, very much. I wear, so now I'm in my like premenstrual phase. I know that you have all of these really great names for it, but I don't know them by heart. But my premenstrual phase, I just feel like that's my really one time in the month where I'm not so expressive. So I just wear my like sort of like darker colors. Also, I think my friends now know that like when I'm in brown or like darker colors, like I'm like premenstrual, because this all because otherwise this never happens. Like I just don't really wear black or brown. But when I'm like a few days before my period, like people know.
that.
I'm in my like little bit invisible outfit, which for me is very rare. And then the moment that I have my moon and like all of the days afterwards, yeah, it just really goes. Like the moment I have my moon is actually great. It's like celebration. So then I would like to wear like reds and feel like I don't know. I feel like a little bit of like a witchy lady. So I like to wear like dresses and then underneath maybe in the winter like leggings and like little woolen socks, or in the summertime just like long flowy dresses. And then yeah, and then I think the phase after, what is it called again? You know these words, I don't know the
So you have your menstrual phase and then your
yeah,
follicular phase, which is more like your inner spring,
phase.
and then
Yes,
your
and then
ovulation, and then it's summer, and then your premenstrual is like luteal and autumn.
luteal and autumn, yeah. So I know just like the follicular phase. I'm then like the cute little belly tops come out and like the low waist jeans, and then I feel very cute and I'm in more colors again. And then I think yeah, the ovulation phase is the same. I feel like there are good like 2.5 weeks of the month that I just feel like every morning I just want to just feel like a very sensual version of myself. I'm also going now through a little bit of like my own sensual and sexual liberation, because I feel like I've spent my entire also like 20s like dressing myself down because I was so afraid to be
Mm.
viewed as sensual or sexual. So I always would just like have a really cute smile and like have a long dress on and be like, don't worry, I'm not intimidating or I'm not asking for anything. And I think now I'm just like, no, like I want to wear the short skirt, and I'm even considering like a little belly piercing, and I'm going through my whole little new revolution of just embracing, not that that has anything to do with your sensual liberation, but just like a homecoming in my body where I feel like it's okay that my belly is seen or my legs are seen, or it's okay to also be seen as a sexual being or a sexual woman that enjoys, you know, the pleasure of existence itself and just celebrates
Yes.
it with
Oh
her
my
beauty.
God. Yes. All of this.
All of this. I was like, wow, like this is for me was such a big thing. Like I just like I was always a bit shy, and I think now I'm just I feel like I'm just at the start also of like also within my sexuality. I really notice like, wow, I don't know. How old are you?
I am going to be 33 in April. So I'm
Mm,
32 now.
amazing. So don't you also just feel like the moment you're almost in your 30s, you're just like you just feel this like weight of your 20s and all of these stories that you've been told, and like the wanting to be liked and approved of, and like having to deal with all of these things, and you're just coming into yourself and you're just like, wow, there's such a spaciousness now and
Yes.
relaxation.
Yes. That's what your 30s are about.
I'm just so excited. I feel like I just came out of my Saturn return and I just feel like I'm a whole new woman, and I'm like ready for both spring in the outer world and like spring in my inner world, and spring with all the outfits. And all the friends and all the things. So yeah. Was that an answer to
Amazing.
your question? Yeah, I think
That
so.
that
Yeah.
answered my question perfectly, and I would love to end on this beautiful springy note. And I hope that everybody who listened to this is extremely inspired to go and find beautiful garments and beautiful clothes, and is also inspired to go back to their roots and their land and take a deep dive into their own bodies and pleasure and sensuality and all the things. And I'm also curious before we end, whether you could share where people can find you should they want to learn more or check out all the beautiful garments that you create with Zazi.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I have my Instagram, which is Jeanne Kroon, and then I have the Zazi Instagram. And I think for me, the most important thing is that it just inspires people, like, whether it's not your style or it's not your budget. But I think ultimately, like, why I started it is just for people to feel inspired to wear something that is made with love. And you can really find this on every budget and every style. So also when you're into like white linens, you have incredible, women's owned organizations that make really beautiful, more minimal white linen outfits, or like, simple things, or like, thrift shopping or creating or mending. And I think this is really something that's been so inherent to women across the world. Like,
Mm.
it is something that is in our being, to weave worlds together, to weave communities, and really bring life and creation into this world. Yes, I think it just mostly like what like, yeah, I think I hope that I can inspire by my, like, I guess, expression of life, to reconnect to this incredible inherent beauty that we all carry.
Mm. To me, you're definitely an inspiration in that exact way. So I can
Thank
confirm.
Yay!
Thank you so much for coming on and making the time to share your story with us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much, beautiful Iris, and I'm really excited to connect more with your community soon.
Okay, this wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Want to know more about me? The best way to reach me is via @CycleSeeds on Instagram. And if you heard something today and you think, oh my God, wow, I learned something new, feel free to share the podcast on your social media and tag me. Or leave a review or rating. In this way, you help me reach more people like you. Thank you so much.